see you've found our little hiding spot in the universe. Don't get too comfortable. This is a place where you will find those with an experience that's out of this world, and possibly deep within your life. I welcome you to the Oracles with James Tyson. Lean forward and listen. We will pull you into a supernatural journey with guests from around the world, each one experiencing some of the most extraordinary phenomena this wee planet has to offer. Now, here are the Oracles with James Tyson.
Thank you, Liam. And thank you, listener, for tuning into today's episode of the Oracles with James Tyson. It's me, James. And today I'm bringing in a friend of mine, a psychic from the other side of the planet. Well, actually, the other side of our continent. Nicole Majik. That's M-A-J-I-K. So please bounce over to the website, Majik, M-A-J-I-K-L-L-C.com. And you can kind of check out what she does. We're going to be talking about one of the things that drew me to her, which was fork bending. The goddess of cutlery, or maybe not, because I think she's been thrown out of every Denny's from right across the continent itself. A friend of mine, Brittany, she found her literally online and said, I took this course from this lady online, and now we're best friends, and I can bend forks, and I can do all sorts of things. And I thought, that's really interesting, but isn't that a scam? Isn't that some kind of parlor trick? Or aren't you using cutlery that's kind of the made in Taiwan, really crap metal stuff? And she, oh, no, this stuff is really good. Brittany goes out to the secondhand stores and buys a really, like the old Skookum 1950s and 60s cutlery, and she bends it. And it's fascinating to me, absolutely fascinating to watch her do it. And it's all to do, allegedly, she says, with focus and focusing energy. So I needed Nicole to come on, and we'll talk about that. But once I got her here, we started talking about the quantum field and the torsion field and past life trauma clearing and aura photography, quantum. She's a biochemist. She is a scientist, basically. If you go to the website, you'll learn a little bit more about her. She says that her intuition and divine guidance, as well as her ability to see auras back since she was a small child, allow her to perceive many levels of awareness for a person or situation. Now, as a scientist and a metaphysician, she loves to ignite interest, passion, and curiosity in people, and allowing them to awaken their own true potential and divine purpose. Nicole is a very, very interesting human being. We actually started talking about a near-death experience, and she says, I don't think we have time for this. So she's going to come back. She's a very, very interesting person. She's got a diverse background. It's in biology, chemistry, metaphysics, and finance. And literally, she's a scientist, which also is one of her weird illnesses too. We're almost a near-death thing. Maybe it's not the near-death, but she got mercury poisoning at one point and didn't know that, and she was going through this whole illness process. So we're going to talk about a bit about that. But yeah, great to be into chemistry and biology, and next door to a room that was used to store and remove maybe mercury from old thermometers. But of course, they didn't tell anybody that, and she had to sign one of those agreements that, you're not going to sue us, right? But we really don't want you working here anymore. It's like, welcome to corporate America. But Nicole is fabulous. She does this. She is in Rhode Island, right on the border of Massachusetts, just south of Boston, and an hour or so to south of Boston, in a small town, which name I can't pronounce or even remember right now. But Nicole Majik, again, that's M-A-J-I-K. It'll drill that into you, so you can go find her. You can find her on Facebook. You can find her on Instagram, and of course her website, magicllc.com, where she does a lot of things for people. She actually puts on a lot of events and does workshops. Of course, the fork bending workshop, you can go online and do those, and a few of the other things. It's kind of fun. It's kind of fun to talk to somebody who's that intuitive and that connected. I'm actually having her not on the show, but she is going to do a remote viewing from Rhode Island to British Columbia here on the West Coast in a friend of mine's house that she's moved into, which is become really active with spirit activity. So I'll let you guys know how that turns out. But yeah, Nicole's, when she has some time, she's going to shut her eyes, take a breath, and show up in my friend's house. Which is it's a whole level of creepy. But anyway, before I get carried away just talking about her, I'm going to run down and get her right now. Hey, Nicole, how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I am well, out here on the Pacific Coast, and you are darn near in the Atlantic Ocean, so about as far as away on this continent as you can get to me. But it's really nice of you to drop by today. And I know my listener is going to be fascinated with the things you're going to be telling us. It's interesting. You and I were introduced by our friend Brittany, who I've been chatting with for a long time. She lives out in your area. She was all giddy because she started taking the cutlery bending or the fork bending, spoon bending thing from you. But before we get into that, I need to know a little bit about who you are and when this woo-woo stuff all started for you.
I love that term, woo-woo, because my background is in science, biology, and chemistry, and I also have a master's in metaphysics, so that woo-woo stuff is kind of funny because I love the science part of it. But who I am a scientist, a chemist by trade and training. I also have a background in finance as well. So I take all these little things and I put them all together to help people. What is there anything specific that you want to know about me? Because there's a lot.
So much. Okay, we'll stick with the kind of the spiritual side of you, because I know you're more than just a spoon bender. You are an intuitive, you're psychic, you're a very high vibration empath. When did this kind of percolate to the top? When did you notice this?
When I was a child, I was very tapped in, since then there were spirits in the home that I was able to see, hear, sense, things that people were afraid of and that typically wasn't afraid of because it was like a daily thing. I could see auras and sense energy around people. And when I actually realized that it's, quote, not normal, I guess you could say, was when we were in church. And to me, everybody else looked like their auras would change, the energies would change around them. But when we were in church, I always saw the priest as purple. So to me, the priest never changed when I saw him. So one day the priest was green, and I was probably about 7 years old at the time. And I looked at my mom and I'm like, "Hey Mom, how come Father so-and-so is all green today and he's always purple?" And she kind of looked down at me and said, like, "What? Do you see color around people?" I said, "Yeah, don't you?" And at the time, it was a little bit more accepted, at least from her, because there was a Christian author that wrote something about auras and seeing that the first layer, that glow. And when she asked me that I could see colors, I said, "Don't you?" And she said, "No, but sometimes if I look really good and focus, I could see the little like whitish blue light around people." And I was like, "Oh no, Mom, there's so much more than that." So it kind of instigated her asking a bunch of questions around it, which, opening that can of worms then kind of opened me up for a short period of time. And then I started to shut, because in my household, a lot of these things that we call gifts were taboo and not of the light in their eyes. So
yeah, that happens to a lot of people, where it's that tradition and superstition almost want to shut that down because it's perceived not to be something that's good. I think the CIA, even at one time, we used to have a lot of remote viewers, and a new head of the CIA came in, I think it was the early 90s, who was very Christian, and when he opened that file up, he said, "We're doing what? That's of Satan." So shut the remote viewing program down. Meanwhile, India, China, Russia, Canada was still doing remote viewing, looking for things. And it took a while to get remote viewers back, into the approved section of the CIA, and they were doing such a good job. And a friend of mine, a psychic friend, was one of the people that used to do it. And she said, "Yeah, this guy came in and said, okay, this is all of Satan. We can't do it." Well, we're actually just training people to do it. It's not like we're tapping into some woo-woo. She was tapping into her woo-woo side because she just naturally did it. But other people were trained. But it was over. He didn't understand it and shut the thing down. So yeah, it can. And in families, a lot of times that is really suppressed. When the one little kid, usually the little girl, is walking around saying, "Well, Grandpa came through yesterday and said this," and "Grandpa's dead." Hold on, that is the devil tricking you. Get away from that kind of thing. And you unfortunately see Grandpa, who is sad, standing at the foot of your bed as something evil when he's really not.
I actually have a funny story about that.
Okay, tell me your funny story.
So I have an older sister and I have a younger sister, so I'm the middle child. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, no kidding.
And when my grandfather passed away, there was in the morning, there was a little bit of a stir, and my older sister came in and she said, "Pepe Joe passed away last night." And I said, "Yeah, I know." And I just continued doing what I was doing. And she couldn't wrap her head around my behavior and my response to that, because she was telling me for the first time I should be shocked or something, right? And she goes, "Well, how do you know?" And I said, "Oh, Sheba told me." And Sheba is my aunt's dog that I was very, very close with my aunt and uncle. I still am. And they're my godparents. They in my eyes as a little girl, I wanted them to be my parents. And it was so funny when I said, Sheba told me that. Now it sounds ridiculous because a dog told me about my grandfather's death in the night while I was sleeping. When she heard me say that, she just got up and she's like, "Mom, Nikki's lying and making stuff up and all this stuff." And I'm just sitting there saying to myself, well, that's what happened. I mean, the connection is there. It's my mom and my aunt are sisters. My aunt is the one who got the call in the middle of the night. Therefore, the dog was right next to her and telepathically sent me a message.
That is interesting. I have never heard the communication from the animal to the human like that. And it was telepathic, so it wasn't like you were in the room with the dog.
Right.
That is interesting. Do you think, in hindsight, or as you think about that, or as you overthink about that, do you think maybe the grandfather was the one that tapped into the dog, or did the dog actually just hear it? What energy actually pushed it? Or do you communicate with animals? I could clarify that. Have you communicated with animals before?
I do a little bit. I communicate with dogs and cats and birds. A little bit.
Oh, just a little bit?
I know.
Well, I guess
Are those things?
Friends of mine, a snake was in their back, a rattlesnake went in my friend's backyard once, and it basically said, "I'm good, I'm just going to get some water." And she looked at it and went, "Okay, I'll leave you alone." And the snake basically said, this will be my area here. I'm all good, just don't come into my area. And it was the first time she ran into a deal where a snake was actually talking to, or any animal was talking to her. So that was a little bit unnerving, but things grew from there. As an animal communicator, are you now a vegetarian?
No.
No, no. It's funny. I ask that to every animal. Somebody who can talk to an animal or communicates with animals. I always ask them that. I have yet to find a vegetarian or a vegan person that talks to cattle, but no, it's very, very common. Have you ever tried it with anything bigger than a bird and a cat and a dog?
No, I guess I just never really thought about it so much. Maybe a horse a little bit. I feel like they're very telepathic, and their eyes show so much. But I did have this. I used to have a pet duck. It was an Indian runner duck when I was a little kid, and I also had this cat. And the cat used to watch over our ducks. My sister had one, and I had one. And when my cat died, the ducks were freaking out. He died of old age under my neighbor's porch, and the ducks were flipping out, and we were trying to figure out why they were flipping out, and my duck kept going like back and forth a little bit, like to me and then away from me and to me and away from me. And I looked at it and I'm like, the ducks want us to follow. And my father and my sister were cracking up like, okay, we've watched too much like Lassie,
Yeah.
Benji maybe or whatever. And I'm like, no, it does. So I started following the duck, and it brought me to the neighbor's house, to their back porch, and there was and right to the cat that was passed away.
Wow.
Yep.
It's like it's fascinating how they know something like that was important to the human, and how to get the human's attention and the human over to the more likely it's the cat's sick or the cat's doing something. You need to help it because we can't.
Right.
That's very, very interesting. I know horses, when you mention horses, I know horses are used here, most likely everywhere for this, but for people with post-traumatic stress, the PTSD, where they would, the Canadian soldiers would go to this therapy farm or whatever it is, ranch, and you'd get off and there'd be horses in a paddock, and you walk up and then the horse will pick the person. So one of the horses will come over to the new person, and that is your horse. It's not like I'm going to pick the gray or that one or the chestnut over there. It's you stand there, and eventually a horse will just come over. And not eventually being hours, it'll be in minutes. That horse will come over to you. And that horse is yours, and you look after that horse through the time you're there and through recovery or treatment for the PTSD. But they're very, very connected and wanting to help. So, yeah, horses are fascinating, absolutely fascinating energy.
Yeah, they are. Cool. And now that we're talking about this, like all these things are coming up in my memory of all these different times. The neighbor used to have a ton of cats growing up, and then we had a couple of cats, and so a lot of birds. There were a lot of bird fatalities, but I used to chase the cats, chasing the birds, get the birds away from the cats. And I try to nurse them back to health, and some of them were just too far gone, but I always tried to tend to those. So I think that's where my bird connection came to. And there was a time that I was traveling down to the Keys and went to swim with the dolphins, and one of the people there, the workers there, had said, they told us all like a bunch of things about the dolphins, and we swam with them, and then something really cool happened where the mother dolphin allowed the baby dolphin to come right up to me. And they said they don't allow that. Like, they don't do that. The mother does not let the babies go up to the humans. That it just doesn't happen. And so I was special that day and got visited by the little baby dolphin who came right up to me and then, said hi and then swam away.
That is cool. It's a gift. You've been gifted by that. Nicole, that's actually very, very cool. Now, you didn't go to a place where there was like a slough and it was a compound where the dolphins were trapped, did you?
No, they have like I think they have a thing where it's because it's open to the ocean, and then they bring them.
Yep.
They're trained, but they don't have them contained in like a little, sardine container.
Good. My ex we were in Cuba, and she said, "Oh, look, we can go swimming with the dolphins," and it was like a big dugout that they brought the dolphins in, dropped them in, and it was like, okay, tourists, come swim with the dolphin. It's like, it's not really the same as the poor dolphins like swimming up to you saying, please let me out of here.
Right.
Yeah, it was pretty sad. But I have been to places like that where, swimming with the dolphins was a little more organic as opposed to you're in a concrete pool somewhere and you're flipping some guy $20 to go do it. It's a little more natural, and especially if they have a baby. So obviously they're happy and not overly stressed in there to reproduce and do that. We have wild porpoise on the west coast here, and my mother was swimming at one of the local beaches in Vancouver when she was younger, and a bunch of porpoise popped up beside her. She nearly pooped herself, she said, but she's like, a shark. No, hold on, those are... And they're fascinating. I love being around big mammals in the water. Down in Newport Beach, you go swimming, and these little minke whales. They'll push the feed in towards the beach, and they'll come in and feed on a little small fish. And of course, you're body surfing between the beach and the whales as they come in. And there are times where I was actually further out than the whales were. I look back at the shore and then find out there's all these things moving with great big, dorsal fins in front of me, and hear that kind of, oh, what is it? Okay, it's just the whales. It's okay. But it's fascinating. I love that energy to be around them, and they're just totally ignoring us because they're just like, oh, you guys are in the way again. We're trying to get these fish, get out of the way. This woo-woo side of you, the psychic side, the intuitive side of you, as you got older, when did you actually start embracing it and using your powers for good and not evil?
That's a great question.
And start developing all the little other modalities that you have, because I know we've talked about, because I'm dealing with a person, actually two people on a property out here in British Columbia in a haunted house, and we've talked about remote viewing and things like that, or your astral traveling. Or when did all that start being not overly taboo for you personally, and you could experiment with that? You could okay, I'm not going to tell you about the person walking through the wall at the neighbor's house. I'm going to go to my room and just going to deal with this by myself. But how old were you when that started, you kind of grasping that?
I don't think, to me, it was never a taboo. I couldn't understand why other people couldn't see what I saw, or couldn't understand that it's not bad or taboo or whatever of the devil, because I've heard that plenty of times. And so when I was really little kids like to play little games, and I used to telekinetically, I would take a piece of hair from somebody and make it stand straight up while they're talking, and just it would make me entertained, and if somebody else saw it, it was even more entertaining to see what their thing was. Or if I used to play with my friends and say, I'm gonna take a piece of my dad's hair and I'm gonna make it stick straight up when you're talking to him. And I would do it, and they would just start laughing, and I'd be laughing, and he doesn't know what's going on. He's pushing his hair down, and because obviously maybe he felt it, or maybe he was just self-conscious because they're looking up there and laughing. But I used to do that stuff, so I always was about keeping myself entertained and having fun with whatever. And when I got a little bit older, the whole astral travel started kicking in. I didn't know what was happening to me. So, and because I couldn't talk about it, I learned that I couldn't really inquire and delve deeper into these things through members of my family because they just didn't understand. So I acknowledge that they didn't understand enough to be open enough, and that they, feared what they didn't understand, and they would just stayed in that space. For me, I've always been inquisitive and wanting to know more. So I just tried to get whatever means that I could to understand. I ended up having this astral travel happening to me just whenever. So when I was falling asleep or whatever, I used to call it the tornado because it felt like when the vibration starts, I'd feel the vibration all the way through my body, and it would feel like this tornado was moving through me, and then I would get sucked out like a tornado sucking me out of my body or whatever. And I'd hear that sound in my ears, that whirring sound, and feel the vibration, and then feel that spinning out. And then I could just go wherever. So I did a lot of exploring. This is funny, and I've never actually said this in on podcast or air or any other media that I've been on, where when I would travel out, I used to play with another person while I was out as a child. I'd fly around and I would stay between us and the candy store by the street. And then later on in my life, I found out that my ex-husband, when we were married, we were having a conversation. I was talking about this. I think I was talking about it with one of my kids, just kind of saying, this used to happen to me. And he's like, wait a minute, that was you? So we used to meet up and play in the etherics. And he was very intuitive and gifted himself, but he kind of like stifled his and stuffed it down and it turned it off, as a lot of adults tend to do. But that was me. We would just play and fly around and whatever. So I always thought that was a really neat thing, interesting that we had been together in the astral realm playing as children and then met up as teens and adults.
Were you guys in the same little town when you were kids?
Yeah, I used to live down the street.
Okay, so you guys were close that way. That is interesting. That would be an interesting thing to kind of bump into somebody who was like that. Now, if he's kind of woo-woo, he's intuitive, and you're intuitive through the roof. How are your kids? Are they that way too?
They are.
Glow in the dark, kind of.
It's funny that you say that, because you can actually see, like, glowing in the dark. You can.
Yeah.
One thing that freaked me out a little bit, freaked me out in a, that's really interesting way, is when I go to sleep, I don't know if it probably was about 10 or maybe a little over 10 years ago that I was laying down and I was going to sleep, and I realized, I asked myself, are my eyes open or closed? I had to touch my eyes because I thought my eyes were open. I could see everything through my eyelids.
Yes.
So,
I've done that.
That's a crazy feeling. It's cool. It's crazy at the moment that you realize, oh my God, what is going on right now?
Yeah, I had this feeling when that happened to me, and it happened enough times for me to be conscious of that happening in the past. I actually thought I was dreaming, and the only way I talked myself out of what was going on was I must have taken just before my eyes shut. It's almost like you take a snapshot of the room and then your eyes shut, but things are like your sister walks by or something in the room, and you think, it happens like when you're watching TV and you doze off, but you're still watching TV, but you're actually sleeping. And then someone taps you and says, are you going to go to bed? And it's like, I'm awake. No, you're not. You're sleeping, but I can see you. I can watch TV. It's like, what the heck's going on? Yeah, it was just weird. And so I thought maybe I had just taken this mental picture and it was on play in front of my eyes, and my eyes were just resting. The weirdest thing. I've never talked to somebody else who did that.
Yeah, and so my kids, there's one of my kids used to come into the room, you know, trying to grab some extra cash or something, and like would sneak in, or at the time my husband, he smoked cigarettes, so he'd sneak cigarettes and just kid stuff, and I'd be laying there and doing that with my eyes, saying, and then I would just speak whatever it was. You don't need to be in here. There are no cigarettes for you. Why don't you turn around and walk away? And it's just funny because it's so startling that when somebody does that, obviously you think that they're fast asleep, but they can see everywhere. And if they continue to start moving, I can see you standing over here. I'm like, oh my God, what is going on?
Yeah, that's just my body resting over there, but I am actually looking right at you, and I'm going to the party with you tonight, so you watch yourself. We were talking to Nicole Majic. If you please go to her website, Majik, MAJIKLLC.com. Majic, that's MAJIKLLC.com. She's also on Facebook and Instagram. If we go over to your website, what are we going to find?
You're going to find a bunch of things. It's actually, there are some new things that will be rolled out very shortly. So you're going to start seeing some of the pieces of that with my Transformational Empowerment Alchemy, as well as different things that I offer for workshops or events and speaking engagements that I do.
Okay, cool. And I just opened it up and I'm looking at it now.
Hi.
Oh, there's tons of stuff there. Look at you. You got stuff all over the place. You do events and workshop. Oh, very good. My favorite part, special offers. Yeah. Special. Oh, you will clean my house. That's nice. Oh, hold on. That's the wrong.
No, I will not. Don't do windows.
Drat. Yeah, I wouldn't want you. I was going to say I wouldn't want you looking at through my window anyway, but I thought, well, you don't need that. You can just basically show up and do it anyway. That's very, very cool. Nicole, which part of the world are you in right now?
I am in Rhode Island.
Rhode Island?
Yes.
Nice. You used to live in Massachusetts?
Yes.
Yeah, very cool. It's places that I want to go to. I want to go out into Massachusetts. Rhode Island would be nice too, but only in the spring and summer. I think. My brain is telling me that. My family, my mother's family, they arrived in Massachusetts in 1628, I think.
Oh.
Do you know them? No. Yeah, they were there a while ago. That's it. That's the discussion I get with some of my American friends who say, "Yeah, we're true Americans. Our family got here in 1850." And I'm, really, I'm Canadian, and my family got to the United States in 1628. What's a transformation alchemist? What does that mean?
I work with people to be able to align with their true self and really bring that out so that they can follow whatever it is that's in their passion and purpose in life easily. So it's, there can be changing mindset, giving tools on how to position yourself, whether it's in your career or whatever you're doing in life. I also go through a bunch of different things with communication and relationships, as well as money and manifestation. So I kind of take everything, because what people tend to do is they focus on the one thing that they think that needs change, and they focus on that one thing until, okay, I'm in a good space. Or they hit the brick wall because they get brought back again. And I describe it as more like when you're putting a new wheel on the car, you have to tighten those lug nuts a little bit at a time and keep going in a rotation. So if you're able to keep in check, instead of moving linearly forward and back and forward and back and forward and back, you are moving more in a circular pattern to keep everything in alignment and keep the flow and moving forward all of the time versus hitting the wall to wherever the weakest link is happening and pulling you right back to that space. So that's why it feels like you make all this progress and then you come back and now you're only really 2 steps forward when you felt like you should have been 15.
I've noticed a couple of your other things that you are doing. You do aura photography.
Yes.
What is that?
So that's really cool, where I can use a special camera that captures your energy pattern on film, and then I do a reading that goes with that. Because I've seen auras all my life, I'm able to show you using the picture. The picture's for you, it's not for me. I can just sit there and read, but it's really nice to have this tactile piece of evidence, if you will, or something to look back on to remind you of what our conversation was. And also, when you get them done over time, you can see how the energies move through your person. And people often ask, I'll take care of the 2 questions. Can your aura change? And is my aura going to be black? Your aura is not black. There is something called the stress red that kind of takes over, but you still have a base auric pattern that may be shadowed underneath it. But one of the pieces is we all have a base auric pattern. So that's our energy fingerprint, right? It can change over time as you do like this transformational work. If you have an aura and you want to be more in alignment with who you are, you can align to your true energy pattern and create that pattern instead of what's manifesting in your life. Your aura also responds to emotional stimuli. So the external stimuli that are around you will have an effect on your aura, so it can change it away from the pattern that it normally would be if you were in complete alignment. So there's like this little dance that happens with the energies around you and within you. And that's why doing some of the mindset work or the transformational work really brings in the tools that equip you to stay in your zone and stay in alignment with the energy that you would normally be exuding at that space versus the energy of something external coming in and then just kind of shifting the way that you're acting and behaving because of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's complicated, but it makes sense. When you were looking at somebody's aura, what type of things do they do in their life that could affect the changes? Like a meat eater versus a vegan, somebody obviously under a lot of stress versus somebody who's not, someone who's terminally ill versus somebody who's healthy. Have you kind of felt or feel that you have an understanding of the changes when you look at somebody? It's almost like what I'm almost getting at is getting into the healer realm, where you look at somebody and go, oh, this is broken, or because I see this, you may have gallbladder issue, or you may have, a tumor, or you may just be sad.
I can tell a story of what happened for an instance that could explain what you're asking. I was setting up for aura photography at a shop that I tend to do the aura at frequently or periodically. And while I was setting up, a woman came into the store and started talking to the owner. And what she was doing was talking about something that was baffling her. Every time that her sister came over and brought her nephew over, the nephew would never let her pick him up. And so immediately I was like, okay, what's happening? Let's take a look here. And I looked up at her and I saw because I don't just see colors, I see thought forms, I see static energy kind of patches and things like that. And I saw this energy past her shoulder that was this static energy, and I listened, but I knew what I was going to say to her at that moment because I knew what it was. And I listened to her talk about the pains of not being able to spend any quality time with her nephew because all he does is cry. So I asked her if I could interrupt the conversation, and I said, I see this static energy past your right shoulder. And she said, oh my God, that's what he does. He looks over that shoulder and he immediately starts to cry. And I said, well, do you mind if I do something to correct it? I said, it's in your timeline. It's a past life trauma that is showing up as this static energy, and he's probably tapping in because I could see what had happened to this woman in a past life. And it was not anything good by any means. And it's like one of those movies that would be like, this is extremely graphic and horrifying, and there should be no children allowed in the room while you're watching this. And you probably shouldn't be watching this either, that kind of thing. So I just started working in the quantum field. I usually go into like the torsion. I use a lot of torsion field physics. And I followed the energy, and then I corrected it. It corrected the timeline for her. And it literally only took maybe 30 seconds to a minute for me to do. And she said, how will I know? Because I asked her if she felt anything. She said no. And I said, that's okay. Some people don't feel a thing. There's no right or wrong there. And she said, well, how will I know? And I just smiled at her and I said, you'll know. And within 24 to 48 hours, I got a call from the shop owner that said the sister came in and just was like, I need to know what that girl did, because whatever she did, I want her to do to me, because I brought my son over to my sister's house and he didn't cry. They spent the entire day together laughing and having a great time. I never know what happens. Sometimes I do stuff for people and then we're on our way and you never hear from them again. And I just trust that whatever needed to happen happened, and blah, blah, blah. So as curious as my mind can be, I've had to learn to let it go as far as any feedback and validation, just because when you walk in this path, you can't expect to hear anything back, right? So when I heard back from that, that really is my passion about impacting people's lives in a positive way so that they can just be happy and be where they need to be at that time and moving forward. And that was like the best gift of that entire year for me to hear that happened.
That is very cool, Nicole. First of all, the policeman in me wants to know the trauma, but that's her stuff. When you're mentioning the quantum field and the torsion field, what is that area that you work in?
It's think of it this way. Probably the best way to imagine it is like, if you think about cartoons where the cartoon is moving and it's leaving a trail behind. Or remember when they used to put that little trail on the hockey puck on TV at one point?
Oh, Lord, yes. Yeah.
Okay. So think about that, where you see like that streak behind that hockey puck. Well, now imagine you walking around and your energy is leaving this trail everywhere you go.
Okay.
That's the torsion field. I end up going into the torsion field and tracing energies to a source or a timeline or something, and see if there's like a break or a jump, or it's hard to describe what I feel when I do it, because it's just like everything is happening all at once, because the time isn't, there's no time, there's no linear time to wrap your head around a linear time, but it's flat, like, yeah, it is, it's just like you're there and you're feeling all these different spaces all at once. So it's not like you're traveling through it. You're like there.
Okay. Yeah.
Multiple spaces at the same time.
Now, and this, then to add the picture in my head of this trail coming out behind a human being as they move, this trail itself, when you step into that trail, or when you, I would almost say occupy the trail, when you tune into the trail, it's not connected directly to the meat sack that person's in. It is their soul leaving it. And therefore that trail goes multiple lifetimes.
Yes.
Okay. So you're seeing something. It's not just like using the old hockey puck thing. And this is for people who don't understand this. At one point, somebody decided the puck on television was moving too quickly for people to follow, which was bizarre. And they put this blue kind of this blur behind it, but it's not really fading away. It's actually continuing to go. Maybe it fades away, but in a timeline that you would take a long time to get to, if there was time. It's basically multiple lifetimes, and until it ends or it starts or whatever. So you get into that and then go back. And again, using the term going back is identifying a linear timeline, but it's actually, you just are there.
Yeah,
and
you
see everything
into that space. Because for me, for that particular instance, so I feel different things for different situations. So when I think about that woman and looking past her shoulder, the static energy that was there, it was like I connected with that static energy and then
went directly to that trauma.
Yeah, I went directly there. So it's like, it's almost like if you open up a door and you step in and you just there where you need to be. So sometimes it's in multiple locations and sometimes it's in one specific space-time, whatever. And
yeah, because you're dealing with the like you're focusing. Okay, there's a trauma. That's where I'm going, and that's where basically we'll call it the universe takes you to that location. So you totally ignore everything that's in between because it's irrelevant. Everything that's in between and what happened before the trauma is irrelevant in the task that you were there to complete.
Yes.
So the universe says, no, you're here to do this. The universe being whatever your angel, their angels, their guides. It's like, okay, we've brought you two together at this point in time because it's time to get rid of this thing.
Yes.
Which is interesting. Which, now, you're out because you're right on the border of Massachusetts and Rhode Island. The location that you go to, is that Collective Souls or was that somewhere else?
That was Collective Souls, yes. And
Collective Souls is at 59 Main Street, in a town in Massachusetts that I can't pronounce.
Acushnet.
Acushnet, bless you. Acushnet, Massachusetts. It's and again, if you go onto Nicole's website, which is Majik, MAJIKLLC.com, and if you live out on the east side of Rhode Island, I always like saying Rhode Island. Where do you live? I live on Rhode Island. It's a cool area, and I really want to go there just because it's filled with history, and which is kind of funny because the entire planet is filled with history. But that's history that I want to go poke around in, and it looks like it's a really cool little place.
There's a lot of haunted history.
What kind? Haunted?
Good haunted history, yeah.
Perfect, because that's the kind of history I like.
The Bridgewater Triangle.
Oh yeah.
Talk a lot about
yeah, the Bridgewater Triangle. What is that? Because you and I had a phone conversation. You brought that up, and you said it was kind of like the Bermuda Triangle, but in a different location. In Bridgewater, what is the Bridgewater Triangle?
Bridgewater is a town in Massachusetts, and Bridgewater Triangle. I don't know the exact points of it, but there's a triangle there between that encompasses this marshy area, and Bigfoot's been spotted there. There's what else has been? A thunderbird, I believe, has been spotted there. There's a lot of paranormal activity, whether you're talking about alien ships or other elementals and things like that. So. Yeah, there was a documentary that was made, and some people that I know put together that documentary called The Bridgewater Triangle. So if you want to hear all the things about it, you could check that out. But there's some really creepy stuff that happens there. I guess there's a lot of that in Rhode Island and Massachusetts. And I think Rhode Island has some really neat, creepy places.
Okay. And Bridgewater is in Rhode Island or in Massachusetts?
Massachusetts.
Okay, cool. Is it south of Boston, that area?
Yes, it's southeast of Boston.
Southeast. Hold on, isn't Boston on the coast? It's a port.
Yeah, but Massachusetts kind of extends down around part of Rhode Island.
Okay, so by kind of, is it south of Plymouth? Like Miles Standish State Forest area?
Yes.
Okay.
So if you look at...
Yeah, because there's a whole marshy area in that area. Yeah, just that there's a whole bunch of wildlife refuges and stuff, and it is all marshy in there. So that would be a great place to go hide if you were something encrypted. There's not going to be a lot of people trekking through there. I guess there might be, but the mosquitoes have pushed a lot of them out. But interesting area.
It's a swamp called Hockomock
Swamp. Yeah. See, yeah, and that would keep me out because I don't do swamps well. I don't do swamps in Louisiana because everything there bites you. Everything bites you and then wraps around you and squeezes the life out of you, or just eats you completely. It's like any park in Australia. It will kill you. It's like there's every bug there will take an eye out, poison you, kill you, and then something will eat you. These places are wonderful to read about, but to go trekking around barefoot, I don't think I would do that. It'd be kind of fun. But yeah, see, those are the things that part of the world I'm fascinated by. Yes, I got family history there, but it's not like I got family history from like hanging out there with my grandmother. Family history that goes back hundreds and hundreds of years. But yeah, it's not something I can go back and say, oh, yeah, that's where Granny lived. It's just fascinatingly old, that whole, anything from the Salem witch trials to like all the whole New World contact with the First Nations people. And then the architecture, it's a wonderful place. And when you have haunted history, it just adds so much to it. And because you're close to the water, dead people can draw on that energy to become a little more active and a little more visible. So there's that too. And then you got this Bridgewater Triangle thing. So yeah, it's a good paranormal tourist destination. And when you are down there, drop into Collective Souls. and hook up with Nicole. Nicole, we wanted to talk, or I wanted to get not back into because we haven't touched on it really, but the fork bending thing. Now you have classes about every second Saturday, is it?
I have classes. Usually people ask me for it, and then I just start setting them up. But I do have different ones that were set up at different locations before this whole COVID thing. So I've been doing them online, which
Good, yeah.
I had one already. And that was actually a result from our mutual friend, Britt, where she was asking me for it because she took a class of mine at Collective Souls. And then so she was asking about the fork bending. And I put it together online. And we had a bunch of fun. I have a 100% success rate for all live participants. And I love that because each individual class has its own dynamic and has its own lessons that are learned within there that are so powerful and moving. So I have them when they're needed or when they're booked at different places. So I do have one that is coming up. We had one last month, and we've got one coming up on June 28th.
That is very cool. And again, for those of you who are interested in that, go to her website, Majik, MAJIK, LLC.com. I'm thinking that the people that come to these classes are already a little bit connected, like to the woo-woo, we'll call it, or a little bit higher vibration people to start with. And now you get a room of them together. I can see how each class has an individual, creates its own vibration, its own, the makeup of all these people coming together in one spot. Even online, I found that if you get 6 or 7 people that don't know each other, but they're all, have that ability or have some intuitive background, it's really, really interesting, the whole dynamic of a conversation when you have all them together. Now, that's online. You put them all together in a room and you're going to start focusing energy. We're going to get into the focusing part. That must be fascinating for you as a practitioner to be standing up or sitting down in front of them, and it would be like sitting around a whole bunch of little campfires and getting the heat from them all. What's that like to have a bunch of intuitives in one spot, all looking at you with holding a knife, holding a fork,
holding a fork, without hot dogs on them, the little campfires. Well, what that is like is it's pretty darn powerful, because it's. I'll kind of take you through what goes on with me with a class, because it's always very exciting walking into the classroom, waiting for everybody to arrive, because I usually don't know everybody that's coming. I might know somebody, I might know nobody there. And they come in and immediately the energies start connecting between the people. And then as we get into the class, there's always this little shift that occurs because of the perception or expectations coming into the class, right? And then once they see what this is really all about, all these aha moment flares are going off in their energy fields. So it kind of is a little bit campfire-ish because all these little sparks are flying everywhere.
When you get everybody together and you're all sitting there and they're it's not like they were captive. They're all there because they want so badly to learn how to do this. Take me through a class and how you get somebody to focus, and what is the focus of the energy? How do you do that?
We focus by not focusing. With a focus.
Focus without focusing, but with a focus.
So what that means is, I use the whole scene in the Matrix to kind of explain too, because most people have seen the movie The Matrix, and when Neo walks in and sees the little bald boy bending the spoon this way and that way with his mind, and he's confused, the bald boy says something along the line of, well, once you realize that there is no spoon, then you'll understand. And Neo's like, there is no spoon? And the bald boy says, no, there is only you. So once you recognize that you are the spoon, you bend.
Oh, that clarified everything.
What that means is that we are all made up of the same substance. So you can take a spoon or a fork or whatever, and you can look at it as, this is outside of me. This is not the same matter and substance that I'm made up of. But when you deduce it down to pure energy, which is what we really are, then you are, because we are all made up of pure energy. We just have different shapes. We have different materialized forms. But when you can actually open that window, I call it the window of miracles. That's what I term it, because that's what it is to me, and that's what I use it for, to show people that you can open up this window of miracles and step into that space, and you can now release whatever it is that you want. And that makes profound changes in people's lives. Profound. I've had people leave there saying it's the most spiritual experience of their life. I've had people come back to me like my intuition is like blazing from either my third eye or the fork bending workshops, and it's like there's these shifts that I take people in because I'm helping them focus in a way that they're not even seeing that in focus at the time. They're just doing and like being in that space. So when I help them to bring the vibration to a certain space that they can then tap into that, that's where the magic happens, because people are realizing that I can bend this fork, but it's more than that. It means I can step into that space, and I know what it feels like now, because when you open that window, it has a very specific feeling. And when you step into it, it has a very specific feeling.
So in your workshops, really, the fork bending part of it is just a byproduct of what you're opening in the person. Yeah,
that's your white belt in karate. Maybe one stripe when you bend.
That is kind of cool. How long have you been doing that?
I've been doing it for about the fork bending as a class, about 10 years.
Oh, you'll get good at it. Don't worry.
I know.
What is the biggest thing? Like I've seen, like our friend Britt, she was talking about, okay, she's giddy and I watch her little videos all the time about her bending stuff. I think she's wiped out most of the cutlery in that part of the United States. She's off buying it, going to the secondhand stores and buying boxes of it, which is amazing. To see the forks bend, I've always, before I talked to Brittany about this and watched her do it, I just thought it was like rubbing, like some people will rub the spoon at a certain place and then bend it. So I thought, well, it's just the heat of the friction heating up the metal and making it softer, or it's not really that hard to bend a spoon anyway. But when people actually grab, a chunk of cutlery out of your drawer and try to bend it and twist it like you guys do these things, it's a lot harder than looking at you taking your index finger on the tines of a fork, just spreading them like petals on a flower. It's not that easy, but what I'm wondering is, what is the thickest metal you've ever done?
I do weird things.
No, really?
I actually use that technique to do different things. For example, I actually have a metal cup that has been in the family for a long time. It's silver, but it's thick, and it was starting to get like a little bit warped from just being used. So I was using that actually just the other day. I didn't realize I was doing it. I was reforming the cup to round instead of like oval of what it was taking this form on. But I don't pay attention much to it. And now that you say that, I do different things. Like if I'm using something, you can bend pipes with it. If you usually, more than one person focusing on something is going to be helpful if it's really, really thick, but you can do that. You can bend things that you, quote, normally shouldn't be able to bend. So I use really high-grade cutlery in my classes to prove the point of you're going to be able to bend this, and when you get this thing in and you try to bend it, I had my friend Monica, who runs the Revelation Project, she was taking my class, the fork bending class, and she had asked me to give a little intro into one of her Facebook groups. And what ended up happening is she's like, I'm sitting here right now with the forks for your class, and these are freaking impossible to bend. And I just laughed. And I said, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And as soon as I said certain words that clicked with her on how to understand what happens, tune totally changed, and she was like, oh my God, I just bent the fork that you sent. And I'm like, oh, the one that was impossible to bend? I'm like, congratulations, this is awesome. And it's seeing that moment where somebody is going from this is impossible to I just did it. And that right there just shows everything that your reality and your belief system is what holds you in whatever little box space or whatever vast expansion of space. It's all up to you right here in your mind.
That's fascinating. I'm just imagining like 10 guys focusing on the bars of their cell in jail. Okay, if we all concentrate really hard, we should be able to get out of here. Yeah. Luckily, we don't have jails like that anymore. They're all just metal doors. I think Brittany was talking about wanting to bend a bar, like a metal bar or something, and work her way up to that. Does it depend on the individual, or can absolutely anybody do this?
I firmly believe that absolutely everybody can do this. Everybody. Because we all have the capability to do that. It's just a matter of being able to tap into that window, and then obviously not just do it for a workshop and then forget it. You're supposed to take that information away, and once you access the window, you will never forget how it feels. So once you're able to kind of like stretch that window open longer and longer and longer, that's where everything begins. Is there's so much stuff that you can work through with that. I do want to mention one thing, because you did mention that whole rubbing the fork or spoon. People use. I do want to make a very big distinction between real fork bending and a magic trick spoon bending.
Okay.
Because if you watch the people that do the little rub the neck of the spoon, and then it usually goes down straight to the side, to the side, that typically is one that's already broken completely, and is just being held together and rubbed and allowed to fall. Because if you notice, when they're doing the trick, usually they have another actual bent one behind them in a pocket, whatever. So they'll take that one away and they'll bring out one that's bent. So then they'll give that to you. If you watch myself or any of the participants in the class or Britt do the spoon bending or fork bending, we're doing it right there.
Yeah.
You see everything. There's no hidden part. There's no hidden part anywhere. So that, just be careful of that, because there's a magic trick and there's the real thing.
Yeah, and the sleight of hand or the illusion, because I actually saw a video. I think Britt pointed me in the direction of a video of a guy doing the rubbing thing, and the head of the spoon flopped down to the side, and he kind of just threw it on the ground, raised, it's like, look what I did, and walked away. I was thinking, and automatically I think, yeah, it's a scam. You're not actually bending the spoon. It's something different. What is it? If I was sitting with you on your workshop and I have my cutlery with me, and when you say you get people to focus without focusing or concentrate without concentrating, is there a bit of a meditation involved in that? Is there
shut your eyes and breathe, or how do you, what is the method of doing it? How do you do that? Or do I have to take the bloody workshop?
The next one. You should come.
Okay.
There are several different techniques that I show. And depending on the group, I'm also watching the energies, and sometimes I'll see people opening up the window, and I'm just sitting there in my mind screaming at them like, bend the thing, bend it, right? Because I see it and I get excited. But there are different techniques, and different people and the way that they think need something else. So I teach different things. I usually start off with some easy ones that many times there are people who do a lot of energy healing or Reiki that are in the room. And there's a difference between running energy and doing Reiki and energy healing and opening that window. So you can use the energy healing to access that window, but it's not the same as opening it. So that's what I have to show them, people coming from that side of things. Then there are people that are extremely analytical in their heads, and there's a ton of stuff in there, and they're analyzing and overanalyzing everything. And a lot of times, that type of person can also be like, do it. And they're just focusing on the task that has to get done. So that person goes into my category of, okay, that's a different technique. So usually I watch them not be able to do it for a couple of techniques in, because their mind is going to pick up on something else. So then I switch over to that. So I'm kind of moving through different techniques for different people. And then there's sometimes people are so much like wildly in their heads that I have to rip them out of it. And then so I have a special technique that I use for that, which is, it seems a little silly, but those are the people that usually are, they're the latter ones to pick up on it, but it's because of that. And I almost have to get them into that space of, okay, I'm ready to do whatever you tell me to do at this point, because what I'm doing isn't working. So there are different people in the room, and I usually have a complete mix of those people. This last one online was interesting because people got it so quickly. So we were able to actually go into more advanced work with that window. So that was really a cool thing. Yeah,
that is fascinating. I want to do it now. I want to go out and try to bend some cutlery. I still have no idea how. But
in the U.S., I send out forks. It's part of. So if you walk into a room and I'm teaching you live in person, I usually have the forks displayed, and then you're choosing your forks. What I do with the online is I have a registration deadline in order for me to get the forks out, or you can choose to supply your own forks, and then that doesn't have to happen, and it's a slightly different price. But
BYOF.
Yeah, bring your own fork. Or you can choose to get a couple of these babies that I have sitting in front of me right now that are like super thick.
Yeah, well, that's it. If I was going to try one, I don't think I'd start at the one I got from Denny's. I'd start with one of the older ones that you kind of find at the secondhand store. And I know Britt was trying some, and I told her to go to the secondhand store and get some old ones, so when she bent them, she can make a mobile out of them, because the older ones sound really cool when they jingle together. There was a lady in my neighborhood, and she had all these antique spoons and forks hanging on a mobile, and they weren't bent; they were just straight. But when it was chimes, it was beautiful sounding, and I thought hers would look really cool, all twisted up and hanging in a tree or something.
Yeah,
And
I saw some of what she was doing, and they look awesome. I think she's going to have like a little. I think she's going to have some good things to sell.
And the other thing too is, I know when she started doing this, she started posting her videos. Of course, you get a whole whack of the skeptics, which is actually hurtful because they don't understand that it's not like fork bending isn't something that a person would do coming out and say, hey, this is what I do. And it's really cool. And I want you to get a hold of Nicole Majic and take her course, or look what I've just learned how to do. I'm so excited about doing this. Like, you don't do that if it's a scam. It's like, it's not like, hey, look at me, look what I can do. Oh no, it's a fake. Well, no, hold on. I'm not actually coming out and wanting to do this just to trick you, because I don't need that energy in my life, frankly. And it was really sad that she was getting dumped on by so many people. But I guess you've run into that too, where skeptics are actually a little bit, well, in any of the things that you do, any of the woo-woo stuff, you're going to have skeptics coming up and kind of jumping in to what you do and calling you a liar or a heretic or all those other bizarre things that people tell each other.
Demonic.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember, what was it? And before we go off the air, I'm going to find Britt's fork bending Instagram, and I'll tell people about it because it's kind of funny.
Iridescent Magic.
Which one?
It's her Iridescent Magic.
Iridescent Magic. Oh, that's right. How would I?
Her Iridescent Magic. Yeah, look her up. Follow her.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Iridescent Magic on Instagram. That's Brittany, and she's a lot of fun. She's adorable, and she bends things. And I remember now Iridescent Magic because I couldn't spell the word iridescent. So it was like my dyslexia looked at it and said, "No, you can't spell this. Move on." Yeah, try to find a link somewhere else. You're not going to search Iridescent Magic. What's your Instagram? Nicole Majic or just Magic?
Nicole_Majic with Majik.
Okay. And Facebook, same as Nicole Majic?
Facebook is Magic LLC.
Okay. Magic LLC, just like
find me as Nicole Majic too. I actually have 2 pages.
Well, look at you just bouncing around like you own the place.
I do.
Yeah. I think I have 3 or 4, so it's the same thing. It's like... People say, "How you never?" I sent you a message, and it took you like 2 days to get back. Did you ignore me? No, I have almost 5,000 close personal friends on Facebook, and if I get 10 messages a day, it takes a while. But if I get 20% of my friends on Facebook sending me messages every day, it gets a little busy to get back to people. So please bear with me. Okay. And again, the website for Nicole is Nicole Majic, and it's Majik, because that's a cool way of spelling it. And then you can go there and you can find out all her, what events and workshops are coming up and all the other stuff that she does. Do you teach anything, or have you ever done anything to do, you do the aura photography, which is kind of cool. What is the alchemy of transformation? That's one of the little things that you get going. It's more. I was gonna actually tell you what it was, but I have no idea. So what is it? Alchemy of transformation.
Well, the Alchemy of Transformation is basically my process. It's the program for if somebody who wants something more in their life, that their fears, their patterns, all kinds of things seem to be sabotaging, or you're self-sabotaging you from living the life that you deserve without compromising who you are. It's a program that brings total transformation into your life through all different aspects. I use what I call the 5 pillars of success in there, or 5 pillars of transformation. You can term it either way that you want, but it's very strategic and brings you through a specific process of awareness, identifying your triggers, and also then repatterning or reprogramming your mindset in order to go into this space. So I have different things that I go through with people specializing in tailoring it to what it is that they need. So this is actually part of my membership program that's going to be rolled out shortly, and I'm just waiting to hear back on the web and techie people that I have on my team that will be giving me when I can start rolling out my target date. So all the stuff is being prepared right now and on the tail end of that. So really, really excited about rolling that out and helping to change people's lives, because it brings in a lot of the science and quantum physics with everything and with changing your life, because I know what it's like to go through so much all at once. And when I almost died from mercury poisoning, it seemed like every area of my life, bless you, every area of my life was in shambles. And really the only thing that I had to hold on to by a thread was where my mind was and my mindset. And even though I had lost a lot of memory from the mercury poisoning, it was my mindset that said, okay, well, you have to keep trucking on here, because if you don't hang on there for your kids, you're going to die. And I refused to die, and I knew I had a purpose in my life. So I said, okay, well, how do I figure this thing out? And that then started me on my process of creating the alchemy of transformation, because it's what I did in my life and what I continue to use in my life every single day to continue and reach my goals and my dreams and things like that. And I think everybody should be able to walk in that in a complete fearless mode. And until you get there and actually experience fearlessness, people don't understand what that is. You can think about it, even myself, thinking about what it's like to be fearless, and then actually achieving that state of mind that sometimes I'll sit there and I'll try to feel fear in different scenarios, and nothing seems to really faze me with an actual fear. I cannot, because I'm in alignment with my true self, my true purpose, and my divine essence. It doesn't allow you into that zone anymore. So your frequency, and maybe this is where you say you glow. I've heard that from many people before, but it's like I think you glow in also a different light, because you're at a different frequency where certain things just cannot penetrate through and disrupt your own alignment.
Yeah, that's fascinating, and now I want to take the course, because I want to get to that place. I have gone through I was gifted a meditation a few years back. When I say gifted, it literally just came to me, which I know usually that's a gift. It's from somewhere else. But I went back as far as I could in my mind to when I was bullied as a kid or hurt. And I was basically told to just add 3 words, I forgive you. And then move on to the next incident and all the way up to the guy who cut me off in traffic that day, and just add the 3 words. And when I say the I forgive you, I'm not dwelling on the incident itself or overthinking it, and I'm not putting a lot of weight on the words. And I describe it as the guy in the banana export factory where the bananas are going down the conveyor belt and he's putting the Chiquita stickers on them. That's how quickly it hits. And I did that for 6 or 7 nights before I fell asleep. And I went back on the last night. I went all the way back to the first time I was bullied or hurt or whatever the incident was. And I went to say, I forgive you. And in my head, I said, I friggin' don't care anymore. And everything that I had felt and carried all my life was given back to those individuals.
So I no longer had it. And I swear I was like 4 inches taller the next day. And the byproduct of that is I can't get angry.
Isn't that awesome?
So I can't lose. And I discussed this with a number of psychics over time on our show. I used to have an episode called Two Mediums and a Large. And the mediums, we would talk about it. And it was like all the pain that I had felt from being bullied or hurt or whatever it was in my past life. It was like I took that anger and I took that pain and I put it in a quiver. And now my quiver's empty. So I would use that when I got angry. But now its quiver's empty, so I'd reach back when I think I should be angry, and there's nothing there, so it's okay. So I cannot lose my temper. But I also have to do the forgiveness every so often, every 6 months or so, because, of course, something's going to happen in your life where you're like, oh, really? And then but I do it a lot quicker now. If somebody does something or says something stupid, I just like, yeah, okay, fine, and move on. But it's very, very interesting to go through life a little bit taller and a little bit more open and a little bit where nothing really bothers you. And that's similar to what you're saying about the fear. If I've done it for basically putting up with stupid people or people that are in a bad place in their life. I shouldn't call people stupid, but they're people who say things hurtfully or do things that are hurtful to someone else or me. And I now can sit back and look at it and I see it completely with a different eye. That is one path or one string, but you've showing me a string of fear. And it's a similar. I see it as being similar. That once you've captured that, or once you're under control of that, it's very refreshing.
Yes.
And you don't have to be afraid of being afraid anymore.
Right.
But you still have to be cautious about, don't stick your hand down that hole.
Absolutely.
It's not fear. It's a conscious understanding that things could hurt you. So is that a fear, or is that just a conscious reality and a smart way of thinking of protecting yourself? It's not a fear. It's just consciously understanding. And fear is a base instinct. Fear is, as a policeman, I've been around dead human beings. The smell of a dead body reacts. There's something primal in our way back in our mind, in our monkey mind, that when you smell that smell of a dead body around a corner, it's telling you do not go around the corner. And the reason it's like, hey, one of your species got killed there. So are you going to go? Maybe you're going to get killed. So there's this hesitation. And once you've smelled the smell of a dead body, you'll always know that is a dead human being. When you ever smell that smell again, you walk into a house and go, oh, yeah, the person's dead. You just automatically know it. And it's just a weird odor. So it's primal. And so is fear. Fear is that primal thing because it's a self-survival mechanism. But to understand that sensation is something that you can control, that it's an indicator as opposed to it's something that takes over your entire body, like absolutely scared, like terrified. If you understand it's just the indicator and go, okay, there's something I should pay attention to. That is a really cool thing, Nicole. I want to go there.
Yeah, it is a really cool thing. And I kind of want to go back to your thing about the going back and saying, I forgive you, because there's like a dualistic element there where I forgive you as the person who did something in violation of me, right? Mm-hmm. Being bullied. And then there's also that I forgive you talking to yourself.
Oh.
For being in a position to allowing that to happen, right? Because wherever space that you were in, whether it was a conscious decision to not do anything, not say anything, not do something, it doesn't mean that it was wrong. And a lot of times as we grow, we think, well, I should have done something, or I should have said this, or I should have. And whatever happened, happened. But you can also forgive yourself for being in that space, allowing, if you will, allowing for that to happen, because it's just an experience that you had, a lesson, and something that can develop into something positive, no matter how crappy it can be, right?
Yeah.
Because
I've always told people when I do readings, and I'll see something around people, and I'll say, look, the easiest way for me to say it is, you're pulling a wagon full of shit behind you. You've got to let it go. But remember the smell. So when that smell comes at you again, you can go, oh, no, been there, done that.
Great way to put it.
You wax on, wax off. I'm going to take a step back. But you don't have to drag it behind you. Take the lesson from the challenge, from the incident. Take the lesson with you, but do not drag the incident with you in life. And a lot of time it's a relationship issue. A lot of time it's to do with a narcissistic partner. It's somebody who's, I'd say most of the time it's relationship. And all the bad relationships are in this wagon. Just let them go. Forgive, which will make you forget. But the lesson learned from each of those, you take that with you. You put it in a little manila envelope, stick it under your arm. That's all you have to carry. Or, put it in a USB because it's easier to carry. So you're not dragging this thing. And people drag them. Again, one of the best lines, and I always use this, and I bastardized the line, but there was an Italian team in a movie called The Gumball Rally years ago, and they were in the Ferrari. And they jump into the Ferrari. They were in this race from LA to New York. And the driver, the first thing he does, he says, the first rule of Italian racing. And the passenger looks at him as what? And he rips the rearview mirror off. And he says something similar to, what's behind us no longer matters. That's how we should go through life.
Absolutely.
Take the lesson, but you don't need to keep worrying about what just happened and what's behind you.
People looking back there. You don't have to be in that space. You don't have to, put yourself there because you're not there anymore. You're somewhere else that can create something new. But yes, take the lesson from it.
Yeah. Always forward. Always forward. Just keep moving. Just keep swimming.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating. The things that we can do. I find it really hard to forgive myself. I can forgive everybody else. I still will have a day where something will trigger a memory where I may have done something. I may have bullied somebody. I may have said something inappropriate that hurt somebody's feelings 25 years ago. And something will trigger me, and I will get mad at myself at that instant. I'll just go, swear under my breath, or I've actually said things out loud, and people looked at me and said, what? I go, yeah, I'm just thinking about something. But I can't. It's easy, I find, to forgive someone else. I'm the one I'm more critical of. It's me. Forgiving myself is the hardest part.
Yeah.
People say, oh, you can forgive yourself easier than anyone else. Like, no, I can't. Because I'm a jerk.
Yeah, because there's that, we have patterns and beliefs and epigenetics and things like that that form who we are, how we behave. But it doesn't necessarily mean that defines who we are always. And when we can take a look at how it can be hard for us to forgive ourselves in things, that kind of, you have to take a look at where that comes from. If it comes from guilt or shame or whatever, and then seeing where that pattern lies. So these are some of the work that I do with people, is uncovering, peeling back these layers, because sometimes things propagate as something completely different than the actual root of what the cause is. So the effects and the behaviors and the different pieces of it can unfold as completely different things than what's causing the disruption.
Yeah.
For lack of a better word right now.
And it is like a disruption in the universe, in our own universes. Yeah, a little glitch in the matrix. It's fascinating. Hey, how did you get mercury poisoning?
Yes. It was a compounded effect. So I mentioned that I worked in chemistry, and
I thought you were going to say you were a hatter. I used to make hats, and it was a compound effect over time.
Yeah, but I do say that Mad Hatter syndrome, that's a real thing, because when that stuff gets into your brain, I experienced it, and it is crazy, the stuff that happens. Doing and saying things that aren't necessarily you, and not knowing or not remembering things. Like, I had pieces of my memory that were just wiped out. But going back to the question, how did I get it? I have a genetic mutation that I cannot process heavy metals. So if they build up in my system, I cannot get rid of them naturally. They have to be chelated out. So there's one thing, and I found that out through the process of my poisoning, because I was tested for a year and a half before I figured out I had mercury poisoning, and asked my doctor to test for it, of which I got laughed at, and then had to convince him to just get the test so we can actually see it and at least rule it out if that's not the case. But it was the case, and my levels were dangerously high, that I ended up seeing a specialist. So there's that piece. That specialist showed me that through my mercury poisoning, I had this genetic mutation. So couple up this genetic mutation of not being able to get rid of heavy metals with a chronic exposure over a period of time. My office used to be right next to what was called the old thermometer room. And they were actually doing work in there in the HVAC system and things like that. So there was there was something that was coming into my office. So I really believe it came from there. I was lumped into a layoff after I asked for them to test the room.
Yeah, that's the easiest way to get around that.
Yeah, and then I was lumped into the layoff of people on a project that I was actually no longer working on. On top of that, but I had to sign a paper that said I wouldn't sue them to get my severance package and all that stuff. And all I wanted to know was what was wrong with me, and I wanted to be healthy again. I actually went through a pregnancy like that.
Wow. And
in the beginning part of it, the very beginning. So I don't think my levels were very bad. So it was just kind of accumulating in my body, and it was little things that happened along the way. My hair started falling out. I had all these weird things that were happening, and nothing screamed out mercury poisoning, because it was just things that, it's just stress. It's just this. You have, I was getting hypoglycemic. I had to take care of that. It's like everything was just compounding. And then I had some amalgams that I ended up getting those taken out, because every time you chew with your amalgams, you're releasing mercury into your system as well.
Follow-up question on that is, have you ever died?
Oh, well, I guess that's a loaded question for me, because I had a near-death experience where, God, do we even have time for that? I had a near-death experience. I never was on a table flatlining that I know of, but several things have happened in the near-death experience realm.
Okay, because it's very common for somebody who's intuitive as much as you are, is that they've passed and then got better, and when they come back, they're tuned up, they're cranked up a bit, their abilities.
Well, that did happen when I had my near-death experience.
Okay. Yeah, we won't go into that today.
Yeah,
I'll come back to that some other day and have a whole near-death conversation with you.
Sweet.
But yeah, that's one of the questions I have. My last question for you, what do you think happens to us when we die?
I personally think that it can be several different things based on what your belief is, because you hear about different people's experiences. And when I had my near-death experience, everything kind of went into this tunnel, like everything went dark and then a tunnel effect. And I think that it kind of depends on what's actually happening in your life, what you believe. But I think as a general sense, we go back to the source, and depending on what we've learned in that lifetime, we can take things to the table of, did you learn lessons? Did you try to better yourself? Are you doing things to, accelerate and grow? Or are you just, out there being a con man, right? Doing nasty things to people. I think there's a different path for what happens next, because I kind of feel like we go back to the source, and then depending on what you learn and how you've grown or not grown determines the agreement that you make when you come back.
Okay. That's a good way of putting it.
And the energies are always being recycled.
Yeah. We're always there. We always exist. It's my new tattoo that I got in Sturgis last year. It says, no end. So there is no end. We just keep on swimming.
That's right.
Yeah. Nicole Majik, again, please go to her website, Majik LLC. It's MAJIK. LLC.com. Find her on Facebook, Nicole Majik, Nicole _Majik. That's Instagram, Nicole _Majik, MAJIK, and on Facebook, her Majik LLC, and also Nicole Majik on Facebook. Thank you, Nicole, for showing up.
Thank you for having me, James.
It's wonderful, and we're going to talk about a remote viewing on a haunted house after we go off the air. So don't run away really quick, and I won't keep you that long. But again, thank you very much. I really appreciate you dropping by, and we'll do this again.
Okay. Thank you so much. This is great.
Watching you while you sleep all alone.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. And hey. Let's be careful out there.